Excitement during his appearance at the Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis today. The second-year head coach spoke about a number of things his team is hoping to address this upcoming year. That does include the team's turnover troubles from a year ago. Rhule also highlighted the progress he believes his team is making when it comes to believing in his message.
I think you can tell when a team is ready to make the turn in their body language, in the way that they walk around the building. It's just confidence. For young people nowadays, there's nothing more than confidence. You know, there's such a fear of failure because everything's evaluated. And I think when I walk through our locker rooms and I walk through our weight rooms and I walk out in the field, I see a confident team.
A reminder, the Huskers open their season at home in Memorial Stadium. They'll take on UTEP at 2:30 on August 31st. Sports Director Clayton Collier is at the Big Ten Media Days. He'll have much more coverage from Indianapolis and Coach Rhule coming up here throughout our evening newscast.